Now is the time to take note of what the mainstream media are saying, to take note what the left-wing radical Democrats are saying. Now is the time to consider what your future might be.
There are two ways in which any government can proceed. One is a way based on what you and I would call a free society, which is enshrined right at the heart of the American Constitution. The other one is a way which allows only one view, both of economics and politics, in which almost everything is either owned or controlled by the state, including the media, including the ideas, including freedom of discussion and everything. There is no freedom of discussion. Now, between those two ways, the free society and the totally controlled society, there are, of course, variations. I think what we've learned in Britain is that we've gradually, over the last certainly 12 or 13 years, with perhaps a little interruption, gone slowly further and further away from the free society towards something else. At the same time, we've found, I don't find it strange, but some other people do, that we have stopped creating wealth. We've had a large number of increasing restrictions. And you've been finding two things. First, that we are more and more concentrating on redistributing the wealth we've got, rather than creating any more. To create more, you need a slightly freer society, and you need an incentive society. Naturally, when I see that happening, I look with very great alarm to societies which have gone even further left. That is, they've tried to redistribute even more and haven't had the incentives for people working hard on their own account, doing well for their families, and often then being able to create jobs for others. They've produced a much more prosperous society than we have.
We fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. So where are we with all these comments being made about the election in the United States? Well, I've got several clips for you. The first one is going to be from Lou Dobbs on Fox Business. The key word I want you to look out for here, and I know many of you have heard it, is the word krakens. You have to wonder what Sidney Powell actually means by that. Here's that clip, which I find amazing that Fox even allows Sidney Powell on that channel.
The latest regarding those Dominion voting machines that Kayleigh mentioned and what role they have played in the radical left's plot to steal an election. Sidney Powell is among the president's foremost attorneys on their legal team. She joins us right after these quick messages. She has some fascinating revelations for us. You don't want to miss them. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Breaking news now. Dominion voting systems say they categorically deny any and all of President Trump's claims that their voting machines caused any voter fraud in key swing states or electoral fraud. But reports contradict that claim. In 2016, a senior executive at Dominion told the Illinois State Board of Elections that it is possible to bypass their election system software. Here's what the vice president of engineering at Dominion at that time, Eric Coomer, told the board during a meeting in good old Cook County.
No, we are not allowed to do routine updates without having to go through a recertification effort, but we do routinely give guidance on how to best secure systems, and also going back again to the final mitigation against all of this is a robust auditing and canvassing process, which all of our jurisdictions have implemented.
Coomer said no updates can be done without recertification, as you heard. Mr. Coomer's assurances of a secure system, however, are contradicted by the fact that various vendors, election officials, and others reportedly can access the voting machine code without an update being required. And we know that there were updates on those machines a day before the election. Well, joining us tonight is Sidney Powell, a member of President Trump's legal team, General Flynn's defense attorney, a great American and prominent appellate lawyer. Great to have you with us, Sidney. Let's start with Dominion. A straight-out disavowal of any claim of fraud against the company, its software or machines. Your reaction?
Well, I can hardly wait to put forth all the evidence we have collected on Dominion, starting with the fact it was created to produce altered voting results in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez, and then shipped internationally to manipulate votes for purchase in other countries, including this one. It was funded by money from Venezuela and Cuba, and China has a role in it also. So if you want to talk about foreign election interference, we certainly have it now. We have staggering statistical evidence. We have staggering testimony from witnesses, including one who was personally in briefings when all of this was discussed and planned, beginning with Hugo Chavez and how it was designed there, and then saw it happening in this country. As soon as the state shut down on election night and stopped counting, those are the states where the most egregious problems occurred. We also need to look at, and we're beginning to collect evidence on the financial interests of some of the governors and secretaries of state who actually bought into the Dominion systems, surprisingly enough. Hunter Biden-type graft to line their own pockets by getting a voting machine in that would either make sure their election was successful or they got money for their family from it.
Well, that's straightforward. It may take, you're going to have to be quick to go through and to produce that investigation and the results of it. The December deadlines are approaching for electors, and just as we saw in 2000 with Bush v. Gore, how critical are those deadlines, and how urgent does that make your investigation and discovery?
Well, for fraud this serious, I think even if the states are stupid enough to go ahead and certify the votes where we know the machines were operating and producing altered election results, if they're stupid enough to do that, then they will be set aside by the fraud also. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. President Trump won this election in a landslide. It's going to be irrefutable, and patriots are coming forward every day, all day, faster than we can collect their information with testimony they're willing to give under oath about how their votes were stolen and how the machines operated. They were updated the night of the election, sometimes after the election. We've got statistical evidence that shows hundreds of thousands of votes being just put in and replicated. It's going to be there needs to be a massive criminal investigation, and it's going to affect millions of voters and elections.
With these allegations, these charges, is the FBI already carrying out an investigation of these voting companies where their servers are domiciled? And in at least three instances, we know they're in foreign countries. Tell us where the Justice Department is in all of this.
I wish I knew. I'm not on the inside, so I'm not privy to that information. I know that even Democratic senators and congresspeople for years have reported problems with this system to the FBI and to the government, and nobody's done a blooming thing about it. The people in the election security part of the Department of Homeland Security need to be fired yesterday. They're absolutely ridiculous. Of course, Chris Wray needs to be fired, too, because the only FBI interview of any witness was to intimidate him and try to get him to change his truthful testimony 4 hours by an anti-Trump FBI agent. They still have politics infecting the FBI instead of just following the law. We are on the precipice of, this is essentially a new American revolution. And anybody who wants this country to remain free needs to step up right now. These are federal felonies. Altering a vote or changing a ballot is a federal felony. People need to come forward now and get on the right side of this issue and report the fraud they know existed in Dominion voting systems, because that's what it was created to do. It was its sole original purpose. It has been used all over the world to defy the will of people who wanted freedom.
Sydney, at the outset of this broadcast, I said that this is the culmination of what has been over a 4-year effort to overthrow this president, to first deny his candidacy, the election, but then to overthrow his presidency. This looks like the effort to carry out an end game in the effort against him. Do you concur?
Oh, absolutely. And it's been organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, the big tech companies, the social media companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to release the Kraken.
Well, good, because this is an extraordinary and such a dangerous moment in our history. I really am very concerned for the country. I am very concerned for all Americans. And I have a feeling that most Democrats are first Americans and not Democrats. They have to be as alarmed as any one of us. Sydney, we're glad that you are on the charge to straighten out all of this. It is a foul mess. And it is far more sinister than any of us could have imagined, even over the course of the past 4 years. You get the last word, Sydney.
It is indeed a very foul mess. It is farther and wider and deeper than we ever thought, but we are going to go after it, and I am going to expose every one of them.
Sydney Powell, thanks for being with us, and thanks for all that you're doing. We appreciate it. A great American.
So the next clip I'm going to play for you is from someone called Sarah Westall. It's entitled, "This video proves that Donald Trump won the presidential election." You can find this clip at odyssey.com. That's ODYSEE.com, and then look up Sarah Westall, SarahWestall. So I looked up this person, Sarah Westall, and here's a little bio on her. She's a successful entrepreneur and business executive. In the last 25 years, she's created and developed multiple companies, including a successful management and consulting firm and a multi-million-dollar international import and manufacturing company. She has a dynamic leadership career spent building high-performance teams in highly competitive industries. She has an entrepreneurial attitude, energy and style. Sarah has a computer science and business management degree from the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Minnesota, with the emphasis on management information systems from Carlson Business School. So in other words, she knows what she's talking about. Now, this piece is long and it can be a bit technical. However, you have to admit what you're going to hear here does keep popping up an awful lot. I want you to listen to it and make your own mind up.
Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. Question: what happens when you cheat on an election in an obscenely obvious way in front of the entire world? Well, the answer is you get an army of software engineers that know how to analyze the data, write code to break it down, and compare every transaction, and then show the entire world what has really happened. The world is filled with bright software engineers who can break down and analyze transactions very easily. It's not rocket science, especially for them, and it can be proven. It just takes time and some initiative. Fortunately, this work is occurring right now, and the first batches of analysis is coming out. Authorities, President Trump's attorneys, need to take notice, as this is 100% provable given we have the transactional data. Teams of others could easily verify results, and it can be taken to court to prove the case of fraud, and more importantly, who actually won the election. Further, with transactional data, which we have, analysis can prove every race in the country and see if there was a much larger red wave, as many of us suspect, thus changing many more congressional seats and seats in the Senate. It wouldn't be a close Senate. I am very certain of that if we look at and audit this entire race across the entire country. I recently posted analysis from Truman Black, which was initially posted on the Donald.win website. And there's a group of mathematicians and computer scientists, computer engineers working on this, and they have put out their initial analysis. And what you will see is that massive amounts of votes were changed from President Trump to Biden, as everyone has been suspecting. But further, other votes were removed altogether without reason. As with any analysis, it's important to check the work to ensure it has been completed properly without errors. There is more to do, but fortunately, people all over the world are working on this. And I have one report from an independent news site called No Q Report, and this is what they say. We are going through the data now, but everything we have combed through so far seems to check out. For example, in Georgia, there appears to have been 17,407 votes switched. Biden is currently leading in Georgia by 14,148 votes. So that means that Trump would win based on this. Pennsylvania is even worse, with over 1 million votes either switched or lost. So what do votes lost mean? That means that they just dropped out. So I think they lost a lot of votes because they had to make up for the fact that there was so many more votes cast for Biden that there was too many votes total. You know, they needed to make it look like the percentage of people that came out for the election wasn't over 100%. So they had to lose votes. Further, this is what No Q Report says. Combine this data with what we're learning about other forms of voter fraud, and it's easy to see how a man who couldn't fill a small auditorium with supporters was supposedly able to generate more votes than any American candidate in history. The truth is, he didn't. Millions of votes were manufactured on his behalf. He or someone else on his behalf used the hammer and scorecard to steal this election. I reached out to Truman Black and asked him why he and his team are doing this work, and he replied, "We love the United States of America, and we cannot sit around doing nothing while we watch the most blatant attempt from a corrupt establishment steal this election and the soul of America for their own selfish motives." So obviously this work is one of the most critical pieces of information to prove fraud 100%, and it would ultimately change the outcome of the election. So I am going to go over their post a little bit here, and I'm hoping that you will share this video far and wide. You can also share my article on sarahwestall.com. The title of the article is Trump Won, Fraud Proven. Analysis of voting data shows exactly what happened. And I have the initial post, and I have my commentary there as well, but it's really important that this gets out and people realize how deep and wide this fraud really is. But let me read some of this stuff so that you can see what they did. And he says, everything you're about to read is verified, and it was made by this centipede. It's a person that was involved in their work. They want you to download and make copies, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What they did is they looked at every state that used the Dominion voting system so far. They're going to go farther and look at all the states, because there's two things happening here. It's not just the states that have the Dominion voting systems. It's also the states that use the regular internet, because the hammer goes in and they are flipping votes. So it's a combination of a lot of things. And it's not just then, if they had a private network that also could be hacked, the hammer and the scorecard could go in there and flip votes in transit, not just when it was parked at the Secretary of State or in the actual voting machine. So there's multiple places where the votes were being flipped. But anyways, they were looking at the states that had the Dominion voting systems in place. And Pennsylvania, they had 220,883 votes switched from Biden to Trump, and they lost 941,248. So obviously this would change the outcome of the Pennsylvania election to Trump. You have New York that lost 623,000 votes. You have Minnesota, which switched 2,700 votes, but they lost 195,650 votes. You have Georgia, which switched 17,407 votes and lost 33,574 votes. Obviously, that would flip the state of Georgia. Virginia, maybe that would flip too. 12,163 switched with 789,023 votes lost. I mean, how many of these states would flip? There's obviously a lot more analysis to be done, but so much that has been verified already. And now you count in all the mail-in ballots and you count in everything else that's going on. This is just a crazy stolen election. I also got an article that was on the State of the Nation independent news site, and they're analyzing the fraud that occurred across the state, and that because they tried to steal the election, the Constitution and other court cases show that prohibits them from winning at all. If there is nationwide election fraud and there is a scheme that is showed, that prohibits them from winning the race at all. There's a case from the Supreme Court in 1878 that fraud vitiates everything, it says. By category asserting that fraud vitiates everything, the SCOTUS affirms that perpetrating fraud undermines the entire endeavor, the whole contract, the complete judgment, the final result, or the election outcome, etc. Once the fraud is proven, the enterprise in its entirety, such as a POTUS candidacy or campaign, has been irreparable, tainted, and any result is invalidated. In other words, if it was only the Michigan vote was stolen by Team Biden, their victory would still have to be nullified, since fraud vitiates everything. Vitiates in this legal context means negates, quashes, annuls, invalidates, revokes, and abrogates. So therefore, once it's shown that there's massive widespread fraud or fraud in any state, then he loses because it invalidates his whole race. But obviously they're not going to do that. They're going to want to see massive fraud across the country. And I think, based on just what I'm showing here, that is the case. And this is a Supreme Court case, United States versus Throckmorton. So we do have precedents here. So I'm hoping you can share this video or look at my article and share that as well. These are very provable facts that fraud has been done. I know many people are focusing on the mail-in ballots, and there's a lot of fraud there. There's been hundreds of affidavits signed, but this is proof based on the computer, the data analysis coming from the software. So this is another angle that makes this whole thing invalid. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you so much for sticking with me through this hard time. I was deleted off YouTube, and I had over 125,000 followers. So all of you that have found me elsewhere, thank you so much for sticking with me, and we are all in this together. And thank you so much. I love all of you.
Next, I'm going to give you a link so that you can listen to an audio track that has actually been deleted from YouTube. It's from General Tom McAneely, and you can find it at davejanda.com. That's Dave, JANDA.com, and then look up General Tom McAneely. I want you to listen to that piece because it's too long for me to put out there. But when you hear it, and this is an original interview you're going to hear, if you look it up, it will shock you. I've played similar ones before, but this is directly from the source. Finally, I want you to listen to this totally on the surface hypocritical comment, but I must say, if you listen a little bit more closely, you'll hear something a little different. The comment made on the surface that Republicans would probably agree with, but when you listen more closely, her attack, i.e. Pelosi, that's who the track is from, on Facebook, who not only censored Republicans, but they allowed them to speak in the first place. Her garbled response is very strange, but the second response to a question about the credibility of voting machines is almost deliberately mixed up with yet another comment on social media, which I think was not accidental.
I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I don't know what they have been doing, but I know they've been part of the problem all along. And I just refer back to the Elections Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council and the Election Infrastructure Sector Coordinating Executive Committees and what they said. The November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. There's no evidence that any voting system was deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or in any way compromised. And this is so important because we've had resistance from the other side in protecting the critical infrastructure of our elections. It's the mechanics of it. And this is a good report back that things were going well.
Voting machines, we've seen the social media companies be forced to step in and crack down.
The technology is a blessing, but it's a double-edged sword in terms of communication, democratizing the spread of information. So I would hope that they would have some sense of responsibility because they were very much a part of causing this problem to begin with.
The point is, the socialist media think they've done the right thing, suppressing the Republican voices. However, to quote Pelosi back there, it's a double-edged sword. As Fox News, in the next 30 to 90 days, I predict, Fox News will collapse. It's going to happen that quickly. It's not going to take a year. So what the left have been trying to do for probably 10 years now, Fox themselves will have achieved in less than 6 months. And to the case of a socialist media itself, Twitter, is in fact self-destructing by the suppression tactics that they adopted to protect the Democrats. So come the midterms. They're not that far away already. In the socialist media, however hard they try, it will be impossible this time around to silence Republicans. So be careful what you wish for, because this time around there'll be social media platforms that you can't silence. And it won't matter what Biden tries to do if, for God forbid, he becomes the president. Those voices will still be out there, because there are platforms coming up pretty much every week which are beyond the reach of US authorities. So while Canada suffered for years of things beyond their reach, the US administration will suffer also. They will not be able to stop it. And finally, if I can, I'd like to leave you with a word from our illustrious leader. No, not yours, ours.
Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Oh, and by the way, did you recognize those few words of plagiarism? Not only from Biden with his fake campaign, but also Trudeau using it as well. Build Back Better? Do you remember that? It actually comes from the UN document on COVID-19 and climate change. Don't believe me? Here's a clip. Quote, "As the world begins planning for a post-pandemic recovery, the United Nations is calling upon governments to seize the opportunity to, quote, build back better, unquote, by creating more sustainable, resilient and inclusive societies." Are these things ever a coincidence? What do you think? Finally, I'm going to take a few days off. Hope to be back next week. Thank you for listening so far. Look out for our updates. They'll probably be on Parler. They won't be on Twitter. You can find us at A Radio Canada, all one word, on Parler. And please keep the faith. Remember, the mainstream media think it's all over, but it's only just begun. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Parler, Spotify, and email. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 11:45 Eastern, for our morning moment or tweak. And tell your friends, pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the Canadian mainstream media want you to know. This time, more than any in history, we all need to trust but verify.